It's tabletop time. I'm Jazza, and this isn't the usual tabletop time channel look. This is my main channel mural set. Those of you who watched my Space Bears video where I shared the process of having spent 6 months designing my custom Astra Prime Mercer Space Bears and going through the different conversion processes, many of you very vocal about me sharing the process where I digitally tested my color schemes in Photoshop. And actually, people kept telling me to check out this ImpCat app, which is a way to test your color schemes with minis, where you select the region and it essentially does what I'm going to be showing you to do in Photoshop in this video on your phone. That's great in theory, except it doesn't work for your army. There's nothing in here for Space Marines or Stormcast or Orcs or whatever. I mean, credit to the app designers, that's a cool concept, but the execution of it is not compatible really with 99% of people who want to test their army color schemes. So I'm going to cater to 99% of you. So that's what I'm going to do in this video, is show you how I did that with my Space Bears, and I'm going to do it with a bunch of photos that we took of some models I'm going to test some color schemes with and show you how easy and free it is to do this. Now that comes with a caveat. While we're going to start in Photoshop, I'm going to switch halfway through this video to Krita, which is a free program. So I think it'll be a good experience to sort of go through that together. This is the Photoshop file where I made my Space Bears color scheme. The first thing I did was make it black and white. Now for a few reasons. One, it removes distractions and colors so that when I have my color schemes, it's clear the colors I'm meant to be looking at. The second reason is it can help you see where you might need to balance tone. For example, if you're working on already painted minis, there'll be some areas that are darker or lighter than others based on the color you use. Blue is darker than yellow. So by making it black and white, you can sort of do a little bit of pre-balancing, or even if there are places you want to be darker or lighter based on the materials you're intending to paint them as, you can actually do that in this phase. You'll also notice that I always keep the original image, and every time I make fairly dramatic changes to something, I just duplicate it, because it's really important that you can go back if you make a mistake or if you want to change something. So the next thing I did was block out the colors. This is literally what that looks like. It is not pretty, but when I say block out the colors, not the colors I intend to paint. Obviously, that is not the color scheme I ended up with. It's more blocking the regions of color groups. So specifically, everything on this layer is the same red color, and it's basically the edges that I'm worried about. So underneath here, I've cleaned up the edges by where I've painted that, but it's actually pretty messy. And depending on how you layer it, you can be pretty loose with the later stages. So actually, I think the armor was the first layer I painted, and then I added a layer underneath where I paint in the next biggest area, which is like the guns and swords, but it also meant underneath those red areas, I could be a little more relaxed and loose. So the next step, after you've blocked in the color regions, is to then apply colors that you want. Pretty much everything we're gonna go into as far as testing the colors on your minis is gonna be through what we call layer modes or blend modes. One of the two. I've been doing this for over a decade. I should know this. The other thing I should know is exactly what all of these things do. And I don't know that either. I know some of them that I generally lean on, but in reality, I just experiment a lot. And often I know that multiply or overlay or darken are ones I lean on, but often I just flick through them until something, whoop, that's pretty good. And then you can just tweak with the opacity. You can also do things like go into image, adjustments, hue, saturation. If this feels a bit too red, I can bring down the saturation, maybe up the lightness. And all of a sudden we've gone from a super too vibrant red to something a little more approachable. Now the other thing I need to mention that I pretty much always do, especially with any layer or element that I want to be able to change easily, is I make it what's called a smart object. And this is going to be the asterisk as far as doing this in Krita goes. I don't know if Krita has an equivalent of smart objects. In short, in Photoshop, you can right click, go convert to smart object. And this is super cool because all it means is you can make your hue saturation. If I want to make this like a vibrant blue, super saturated and bright, that change that I've applied hasn't applied to the pixels, it's applied to the smart object, and I can switch that on or off. Or if I feel like maybe it'll look better as purple, I can double click on that hue saturation, shift that across to a purple or pink or whatever. You don't have to do that, and if Krita can't do that, don't worry, you can still use this method. But I would recommend, like I was referring to creating stuff you can come back from, duplicating that group layer. All of those things that you have inside of that folder or that group should be then duplicated so that whatever changes you make, you can always go back to the previous version. You get the rough idea? Let's just do a clean version from the beginning together. And I think this Stormcast dude is a good place to start. Now, this is taken with a black backdrop. You could do this with a piece of paper. It could be white, but I recommend having a flat tone or color because then it's easy to isolate the areas you're actually trying to create your color inventions in.
Remember, we're adding and changing color, and what we're doing is not going to change the texture or reflectiveness of the surfaces you're recoloring, which is why you're going to want to take photos of painted minis, not plastic minis. Not only can some of the plastic colors be overbearing, like the blue plastic of the easy to assemble Space Marines, but the surfaces look like plastic with the surface reflectivity and that plastic sheen. So in short, I highly recommend adding a base coat and then a nice light zenithal so that after you apply the different colors in the process we're going through, the result will look like a painted mini, not recolored plastic.
So step one, I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to go over to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and dump the saturation to 0. This obviously creates some clarity. The next thing I'm going to do is further separate the background. Now this is a little trick that I think is going to be pretty helpful to some of you, and honestly also make putting color down even quicker, and that is I'm using my quick selection tool, just going to click and drag and select all the background. Now this is going to go over some edges, that's fine. By holding Alt and then clicking, dragging inside of areas I want to deselect that I've selected by accident, I can push out the areas I've over selected. So all I'm doing now is literally just grabbing the background, copying and pasting. That's it, because everything we're gonna do is gonna be under that layer. Here's the magic trick, you ready? Let's try a green Stormcast Eternal. Painting in that, oh my God, it's like magic. It's coloring in the lines and you don't even have to worry about it. So I like to go with a sharp, solid brush. I have a brush pack for Photoshop, which has an ink brush, and I find that really helpful because it just has a really sharp edge. Now I'm gonna create the color regions. And we'll keep it really simple. I'm gonna go gold looking in the metal bits. And I'm gonna do that first because it's on top of most of the rest of the model. Next color region, on a layer underneath, let's go a nice sharp steel blue for this metal weapon. Let's go with a nice rich blue and do the handle on our weapon. Next layer down, let's go with some leather. Now I am doing this in fairly bold colors, but also in colors that are generally reflective of what I anticipate my color scheme is going to be, but it doesn't matter what I put down now because I can change it drastically as much as I want later. And then one more, let's get our green. Let's put down our robes. I can just put this in all the areas I think look like cloth, which is kind of the rest of the whole model. And there it is. That's my Stormcast Eternal. I'm done. I like it. Thanks for watching. I'm kidding, obviously, this is just the beginning. The first thing you're gonna notice as soon as you start switching blend modes is most of them make layers underneath transparent, which is ugly. So what I actually like to do is select my magic wand tool, click outside of the colors, then inverse my selection. The shortcut for this is Control-Shift-I, or you can go select inverse, there it is. Then go through all the other layers, delete, 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 delete. And then you just do that repeatedly for all the layers. Inverse, delete, 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 delete. So the reason for that becomes super obvious now when I go back to my original top layer, and as I change the overlays, there's nothing underneath it. It's a clean color swap. But of course, there's gonna be things you're gonna wanna fine tune. How do we do that? There are a couple of ways. The easiest way, and the reason I mentioned smart objects before, is by going back to a normal overlay, turning it into a smart object. You can go through your blend modes, and let's say I like this, but I wanna try it in a silver metallic. I can change my hue saturation, bring it across to the blue, drop the saturation, hit OK, and I can undo that or double click and tweak it as much as I want. So it gives me a lot of flexibility. That's why it's worth mentioning the smart objects thing. But we're not doing that. We're gonna, that's my rewind sound effect. We're gonna do it without smart objects. So with this layer set to multiply, I'm gonna double click on the layer, which brings up the layer effects panel. I'm gonna be able to go over to color overlay, and this is where I can change the blend modes in here. So for the next 10 minutes, I mucked around with different blend modes inside the color effect and on the layer itself to try and figure out the most straightforward way to show you guys how to easily test between colors. And this is the solution I ended up with. With blend mode set to color, that applies internally, but then externally out here, I can change the blend modes and try and find the overlay that works best. And that sort of gets a nice metallic brassy looking effect, but then I can just go back into that color overlay and tweak it to just find a more fine-tuned bronzy, brassy color. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. The further away I move from a saturated color, obviously the less saturated it is, but I can find a fine-tune. Oh, I like that. There you go. So really you want the internal color overlay to be set to the color blend mode, so that externally you can change between your layer styles through this blend mode options thing and find the best fit. And really I can just then go about doing that with every layer. So let's go with this green. I'll just double click to bring up those color styles. Color overlay, let's switch it to a red, something dramatically different and cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, I guess the original is very similar to that, so I should be more original than that. Let's say I want white robes. Ooh, that's a tricky one because I just changed white in color, but it looks black. That's simply because of the layer style. So if I go back to my layer style options, I can just flick through until I find something. There you go. That's perfect. Color dodge, boom. And because the original layer that I'm working on is black and white, I can just tweak the opacity to just choose how intense I want that to be. And then layer by layer, color by color, I just do the same thing. I mean, that's pretty cool. I can group all of that into a folder, and if I want to make a tweaked version of this, I can just click and drag this over to this new layer button and it will duplicate the whole group. And then I can make changes then to this and decide that I want to see a version with silver armor instead. So go over here, change it to my silver, change my robes to a blue. You get the idea. And now actually I can just easily flick between the color schemes I've tested. And I can just do this again and again and again and just change any color or component of my army color scheme like instantly. All right, so the last thing we're gonna do is test this in Krita. I've never used Krita. Can I just click and drag a picture in here? Yes! Aha!
Okay, all right, just wait a minute. I feel the need to address here how poorly printed and prepared this mini is. Now for clarity, this was my first ever resin 3D printed mini. I printed it on the lowest possible resolution settings on my 3D printer to see how fast I could print. So aside from it being really low res looking, I also made the rookie mistake of curing the mini before removing supports. I did this for my first few dozen resin printed minis like an idiot. The real hot tip is hot water. Specifically to remove supports, it turns out it's really easy. After the mini is printed and washed in isopropyl alcohol, before the final curing stage, drop it in a cup of hot but not scalding water for a few minutes, take it out and remove the supports. Now I understand why people were cringing at my very rough removal of fully cured supports. This is so much easier and the result is a lot cleaner looking. And even doing the cleanup on your 3D printed mini in this section is a lot easier too. The resin isn't fully cured on the surfaces, which means it's easier to just sort of smooth out and scrape. And when it's all pretty, then you can cure it and you're good to go. By the way, this, my first mini, well, my reprinted first mini, is a product of Hero Forge, who have sponsored this video. But it's not a mini they sell, it's a mini I made from the website that they have, which is a comprehensive tool which you can use to craft your own minis and then either download and print, or if you want to save yourself time and don't have a printer, you can buy them already printed and cleaned from them. It's really cool. It's a service where you can fully customize tabletop miniatures with dozens of races, thousands of parts and props to choose from, including recently they added wheelchairs because tabletop gaming is accessible to everyone, and I just think that's a really cool inclusive thing to do. And it's all done in a fully 3D, in-depth character creator available to just open up and use in your web browser. Oh, another subject of this video obviously being testing your mini color schemes. Honestly, even easier than what I've been going through in Photoshop is playing with colors on your mini in Hero Forge. It serves a practical purpose. If you don't want to paint your minis, you can buy the fully colored mini prints from Hero Forge. The color is printed in the plastic. It's incredible technology and really high quality results for very affordable prices. So go to heroforge.com today. When you love what you make, you can get 10% off of digital prints and STL files by using the code TabletopTime. And if you want to order their premium plastic printed minis ready-made, you can use the code TabletopTimePlastic for 10% off of that. 2 great discount codes and 1 fantastic miniature making service that is going to take you as far as you want it to go.
So I'm just going to try and replicate that whole process. Do they have a smart selection in Krita? Wand, where's your magic? Whoop, that's a wand of sorts. That's sort of, no, didn't do great. You know, I did all right though. So actually I can select my lasso and alt clicking, I can manually deselect areas that I've selected. You see, this is fine. So I've selected the background, copy, paste. So now if I add a layer in between, grab a brush tool of sorts, look at that, it's done it, beautiful. Right click, do you have layer effect? Do you have layer effect? Where's your layer effect? Layer style, color overlay. Let's tweak this and go with a gold. We're gonna wanna set that to color. There it is, okay. And then we can change the layer overlay thing. Let's just go with color. Next, this, whatever that is. And there you go, that's pretty much it. It's the same process. I've never used Krita before, but I got a relatively similar effect. So there you have it. This is how to test your army color schemes from a photo in a few pretty basic steps. It saves you a huge amount of time, gives you endless flexibility and testability and versatility with fraction of the time and 100% of the knowledge that the decisions you're gonna make in painting your miniature and your army are gonna be a commitment you're happy to stick to. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's very tutorial-y, but you guys begged for it, and I hope it has delivered what you've wanted. Thank you so much for watching, subscribe, and Dave,
what's up, man?
I'm outroing like it's my main channel. I'm in front of the mural and doing a sign-off thing.
Hold on.
Quick, come on, quick. This is really important, Dave.
I'm coming.
We can't do it. We're gonna stay on brand, Dave. We're gonna stay on brand. And our brand is... That feels pretty, thank you. He saved it. Ow.